Hello, happy Wednesday, and welcome back to Tea Break Chats with Lindsey. I am so excited because last week we didn't have a tea break chat because it was half term and I was home with my kids, and I could not do this. When they're around, they are, well, almost 4 and 6, and they require a lot of attention, so there was not going to be any quiet time. So I'm so happy to be back here doing this again this week. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Lindsey Hall, and I'm an intimacy and empowerment coach. And to me, that means that I am here to help people deepen an intimacy with themselves and with others, really own their power and their pleasure, and live a joyful life that they absolutely fucking love. To me, that is the point of all of this work, and it can underscore pretty much any element of your life. Because when you do that intimacy work with yourself, everything else gets to bloom and blossom from there, whether it's job coaching or weight coaching or I was going to say job again. I already said that. Or with your relationships, like parenting, literally anything. It starts with intimacy with yourself first. So I do this because it absolutely, to me, is like the fundamental piece of all of the things that we want in our life. So if you are new to my tea break chats, the way that I do them is I spend the first part of it talking about kind of what's been going on in my life, chatting about things that have come up, lessons I've learned, just general life chit chat, and then I will answer your questions that you have sent me at the end. And because it's been 2 weeks since we did the last one, and more specifically, it's been a huge 2 weeks, there's a lot this time, and I am going to, of course, need to be a little bit selective about what I share because some of it is still sort of live and involves other people who are not just me, and it's not always my stories to share, but there has been just so much going on. And really importantly, I want to stop and celebrate that I am so proud of how I have held these last few weeks. So just as a kind of high level, so it was, like I said, it was half term. I had my kids home with me for 9 days in a row. So just, there was no holiday camps or camps, like day things that they could go to because my youngest is still too young to go to them. And unfortunately for the oldest, I don't want to send just her if the youngest one can't go. So I had both of them home with me for the full 9 days, which is a lot. They're amazing, but it's a lot. And then at the same time as all of that, I had some big stuff going on in my personal relationship. There was a lot of hurt and a lot of stuff going on that I needed to hold and to process. So dealing with all of that. And then I also, during that week, made the single biggest financial investment that I've ever made directly into my business. And making big investments in yourself is a lot as well. And it brings up the stuff. It brings up the fears, the doubts, the insecurities, those limiting beliefs. So holding all of that was a lot. Did I say that? It was a lot. And at the same time as all of this, I normally have Voxer coaching with my coach where Voxer is like a voice note and texting app. So usually I can text and voice note my coach and get kind of daily coaching. But we had taken a month off from our coaching container together. So I didn't have my coach for any of this too. And I just, like I said, just want to stop and celebrate because the way I held all of this is like night and day to how a previous version of Lindsey would have held all of that. This was actually the least stressful half-term holiday that I've ever had with my kids, I think. Although it was 9 days nonstop, it wasn't grumpy and awful, and I can feel my battery super draining as the week goes on. There was a little bit of drain, don't get me wrong. By the time I went back to school on Monday, I was like, it's so quiet around here. But I used my evenings really intentionally. Well, in the daytime too. Handled the daytimes, like how we structured our days and what we did. That was a good mix of out with friends, home with friends, or just house days to ourselves. So making sure we had like activities but rest in there. that then specifically I used my evenings really mindfully and intentionally to make sure that I listened every night to what it is that I really needed in order to feel rested, restored, recharged in all of the stuff that was going on. And by being really conscious and mindful of it, it helped me get through all of it so much better. So pieces that I want to share around that. So if I go back to there's not much to say about the kids being home other than, like I said, we handled it well in terms of like mixing up the scheduling. But in terms of like my personal relationship stuff, and here's where I'm definitely going to be a bit vague. But there was, like I said, just big stuff and hurt going on in my relationship. And to be pretty honest about it, there was a boundary that I had set. And I think I talked about boundaries in the one 2 weeks ago. I very recently did a tea break chat about boundaries. So if you want to hear way more about it, go back to that episode. But boundaries are what you are going to do or not do. So they are not for other people to break as such, but boundary is like, if you do that, I'm not going to be able to do this thing anymore, or I'm going to do that. And I had set a boundary saying, like, I am not going to do this thing anymore if this happens. This happened, and then I had to sit with, well, what do I do now? I set this boundary very clearly. The person did the thing, and now I have to decide what to do about it. And it was really and of course it came up right after I talked about the big boundary chat, because it was such a good, chance to really practice what I preach. And it wasn't about getting mad at the other person, because it wasn't ever. It can't be like, I told you not to do this, because we can't control what other people do. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. You can voice your preferences and what you want and all of that. And that's what this was. But they're gonna do what they're gonna do, and getting mad at them isn't going to help at all. It was on me to go, well, what do I do now? And so honestly, I took some space in there. So I had said, I need some space to figure out like what's going on, and had a few days where I just sat with it all and just felt into what was happening, what I wanted to do, what felt right to me. And all of this is while I had my kids too. So I wasn't all up in my head about it too much, because I had to focus on the kids. We had half-term stuff to do. We had, like I said, they're very active and busy. But I could just let it sit and have the breathing room and have it kind of soak in and percolate through my body, so that later in the week we could sit down and talk about it. And I could then voice how I felt. I could hear what they were saying. We could really both listen and understand, and got to go with this from a grounded, regulated point of view, instead of, at the start of it all, it was like, this thing happened, and like, it all felt so overwhelming at the very start. But by saying, I need to take this space and just process, and letting myself, just like I said, just feel into it, even just a few days later, it was like, okay, I'm ready to talk now. I didn't even know what it was I was going to say or what I was specifically needed to say. I just knew that I had given it enough space, was ready to talk, and we were able to sit down, both of us, from a calm, regulated point of view, and say, here's what's in my heart. Lay it on the table and see what's going to happen from there. And this was really the biggest test of this that I've had in relationship with somebody, of like this big boundary that I set, that, the if this then that happened, and so what do I do with it? And to be honest, in this case, I didn't maintain my boundary, so that is also a thing that is okay. When you set boundaries, and I talk a lot about maintaining your boundaries, but because I sat with this one and processed it, was like, and I came to the conclusion, the feeling in my body of, that thing I said I was going to do actually doesn't feel like the right answer at this point, and it is always okay to change your mind. Just a side note on that, you can always change your mind about anything, and be in integrity with yourself. Like, getting locked into something. Oh, but I said that, so I have to no matter what. Things change, circumstances change, people change. Like, it's always okay and advised to sit and check in with what's true for me now. It might not be the same thing that was true for you when you set the boundary. It might be a new true thing, but it's different to let your boundaries be broken over and over and just mindlessly like, oh, well, it just keeps happening. Woe is me. As opposed to, I'm going to be mindful about this and check in and go, what's true for me now? What boundary do I need to hold now? Do I need to adjust? Do I need to set a new one? And really taking that time to check in with you. So that was a huge part of my week. And then the other thing that I want to talk about is hang on, before I move on to the next part, I just want to say that all of that, though, everything I just said, is a deep, deep part of intimacy work. And I would not even close to have been able to do this in the past. Past versions of me would have run screaming, I would have gotten mad, I would have blamed the other person, I would have been distraught because I told you to do that thing and then you did not do the thing and then you did the thing or you didn't do the thing. And I would have been just an emotional wreck about it and not been able to see clearly how to hold it. So the fact that I could really clearly not blame the other person, not add shame onto what was already a shameful feeling position for them to be in. Past versions of me would have absolutely layered on the shame. You shouldn't have done that. Why can't you just fix that? What's so hard about it? I don't understand. If you loved me then, that sort of thing. Past versions of me would have laid it on thick. Current version of me really knew so much better than that. Past versions didn't. Current version of me was like, hang on, although that might be my reflex because that's an old pattern of mine, that's not how I want to do this anymore. I do not want to add more shame to what they're already feeling. I do not want to compound that. That's not for me to do. I own my stuff. I own my power. They own theirs. What do I need to do to stay in my power? What do I need to do to stay in my self-love and do that but part of that means being vulnerable and having those open conversations. So it doesn't mean not saying anything at all. It doesn't mean letting it slide. I still got to say, this hurt me. This impacted me in this way. This is what I'm afraid of. And I could share all of that and speak my truth without just bearing it all down, while also not putting it on them. And that, let me tell you, is a tricky skill. Oh my goodness. And I'm not saying I got it all perfectly right because we are always human. But like I said, night and day from past versions where I either wouldn't have spoken my truth at all or I would have laid it on too thick. Not that you can lay your truth on too thick, but lay the shame on thick. Whereas I really feel like I got this beautiful, here's my stuff, and I'm not putting it on you, but I'm telling you how I felt. And then got to listen to their stuff and hear how they felt. And we both got to do this beautiful listening and growing. And the depth of relationship that can come when you're willing to do that, as opposed to just throwing your shit at the other person and expecting them to catch it. That's not the way forward. But when you're like, here's our stuff. I want you to see it. I want you to witness it. And let's go in deeper together. So beautiful. This is what I dream about in my relationships. And the intimacy work pays off. This is not fast stuff. These are not quick wins. This is stuff that I've been learning about for years now. But oh my gosh, is it beautiful to be watching it pay off. Okay, I was going to talk about my business investment as well and some of the stuff that brought up, but honestly, I'm a little bit out of time, so that might just wait. But I will just quickly say that, yes, I made the biggest business investment. It brought up all the stuff, all the fears, all the insecurities, all the what if it doesn't pay off, all the what if I'm not good enough, I'm not going to get the results, I'll be the one who this doesn't work for, or I don't, how am I going to have time for this, and just all of the excuses. And really leaning into trust for myself in this. And actually this trust piece has been the theme of everything this week. It's been the theme of the relationship stuff, and it's been the theme of the business investment stuff. I'm going, get out of my head, drop into my body, and trust myself, trust the decisions that I am making, trust that what is meant for me is coming to me, rather than, because I started to go in my head, is this the right program for me? Is this the one? Should I be spending hours and hours researching this, that, and the other? Like, I haven't checked out every possible alternative. And coming back into trusting that this one got sent to me and feels right for a reason. I trust in myself that if I make this investment, I will put in the work and the effort that needs to learn the things, to apply the things. No program ever can guarantee me results, because that's not how this works, whether it's a business course or like with financial results, or whether it's an intimacy course with, intimacy relationship results. Like, nobody can guarantee you results. It all comes down to you and all the other stuff. But trusting that this feels right, this feels like the right next step. My decisions feel right, again, in the relationship, in the course investment, all of these things, really just leaning back into such deep trust of myself this week and going, there's no right or wrong. There's just what feels like the next step for me. And that's what I'm going to go with. And if I need to change course at some point, change direction, make new decisions, etc., all of that is possible. Whatever decision I make here and now does not lock me into this is the rest of my life set in stone. All things get to change and flow, and just trusting that this is what's right for me right now. So that's huge. I have spent pages journaling on what I trust and how I trust myself this week. Okay. I think that's it. Is that it? That was it. Now, for the question part, which has just completely left my mind. What was the question that I was going to answer this week? Oh my gosh. You guys, this never happens. I always have the questions at the tip of my tongue. And now I have totally lost it. Oh, okay. I remembered. That was going to be, I don't know what I was going to do there. I remembered the question. So this one is a, what do I want to say about this one? Okay, I won't do an intro. I will just tell you what the question was. The question that I got sent was, my husband and I don't have sex anymore. My husband and I haven't had sex, properly enjoyable sex, in at least 2 years. And I feel like it's killing our relationship. And although I said I was going to do an intro, my intro to that is so relatable to so many of us. This is so normal, but normal does not mean okay, or the way it has to be, or, well, this is what you're stuck with now. Normal means, girl, you are not alone in this, and you don't have to stick with this as like your forevermore now. So if you and your husband are not having enjoyable, pleasurable, intimate sex anymore, and it's been quite a long time, that usually comes down to there's underlying intimacy disconnection happening there. And the way to go about reconnecting isn't going in with like, we need to have more sex. Why don't you want to have sex with me? Which, by the way, I'm obviously not saying you're doing. But sometimes that can be the answers to try and fix like the sex stuff first. And I think rather than going to that top level, and to be honest, I've had this problem in my relationships in the past, and we went to a sex therapist, and the sex therapist started with the body stuff, with the sex stuff. And knowing what I know now and all the training I've had, I'm looking back, and it didn't work for us, by the way. We started with the body stuff and sex stuff, and it didn't work. Like, it had a very short-term boost, I guess, in our sex life, and then we were right back to where we were, if not worse. And so knowing what I know now with the training I've received and all of the work I've done since then, it's because the sex stuff is like the top level. Down here is the physical intimacy. Down here is the emotional intimacy in terms of like the foundational levels of this pyramid, if you will, in the intimacy pyramid. And you've got to go to the foundations, and even below the emotional intimacy is self-intimacy. So getting those pieces and building up to the sexual intimacy is really the way to get long-term lasting results and reconnection and rekindling the desire and the passion, which is entirely possible, but it takes work and effort. So in terms of starting points, I think, is really looking at, so again, what I've said over and over, and we'll say like in every video ever probably, is you can't control another person. You can only control yourself. You can talk to the other person. You can share your views. You can make requests, all of the things, but you can't control what they do. So starting with yourself and going, okay, where do I need to get clear on my stuff? Where do I need to fill my own bucket? Make sure that I am doing my own healing work. Make sure that I'm not trying to like look at your attachments. If you're got anxious attachment and you're holding this person like super tight, or if you've got avoidant and you're like, no, go away. And sorry, I'm kind of going on a little jargon tangent there. Anyway, let me go back and say, start with your stuff. Then there are ways to work on your emotional intimacy with your husband that I can't go into all of it here now. And then you work your way up. But the one takeaway that I really want you to know is that it is not because you are broken. It is not because your husband is broken. It does not mean that your marriage is irreparably broken, but it means that there's stuff that needs to be addressed and worked on. And honestly, the sooner you can start to do that, the better, before the crack gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And a huge piece of this, often when couples are not having sex, is the feeling of safety and connection. And I do mean physical safety, but assuming that the physical safety is okay, then it's the emotional safety. And the emotional safety comes from feeling connected and seen and held with each other. So whether it's your husband not wanting sex, or other people who are listening to this might feel like, my wives don't want to have sex, whether, whoever I am talking to and whichever gender your spouse is or your partner is, it comes down to making sure that everybody in this relationship feels safe and seen and able to be vulnerable and feels that emotional connection. That is what is going to fuel the physical and the sexual connection as well. I feel like today's was all a bit vague, so I hope it was helpful for you. If you could let me know in the comments, I would really appreciate that. I always want to keep the conversation going. But yeah, particularly let me know what you thought of this week. If you're like, lady, I listened to the whole thing and I have no idea what you mean. Or if you're like, hey lady, I listened to the whole thing and it was really helpful. I would love to know that too. I would love to know. In fact, my request for you is I would love to know what your one takeaway from today's was. So however you are listening to this, if you want to leave a comment or send me a message and just let me know what your one takeaway from this tea break chat today is, I would be so grateful. I would just love to receive that from you. So send me a message, let me know. And if you've got questions and follow-up stuff, for sure let me know that too, because the point is, this is a chat. Chats are conversations. They flow back and forth. So let's do that. Okay, the final thing that I'm going to wrap up with here is that on the back of all of the hard heart relationship stuff that I was doing last week, I am holding a free class this coming Sunday called Healing Heartbreak. Because that heartbreak can mean the end of a relationship, or it can be heartbreak within a relationship, and it can come in so many different ways. But so I'm doing a free class on healing heartbreak, specifically as it relates to dating, and specifically dating after divorce, because, that's kind of my jam. It doesn't mean that it won't apply to other kind of heartbreaks too, but I will be speaking to it from a dating and dating after divorce lens. That is this Sunday. The link to register is in my bio, or you can email me if you're watching this on YouTube and you're like, hey lady, how do I get this? My website link is there as well. In fact, you know what? I will just go right ahead and put the course, this specific Healing Heartbreak link in the comments on the YouTube video. So you'll be able to get it straight from there. So that's this Sunday. It's free. Sign yourself up. If you are dating or dating after divorce, you're going to want to listen to this because heartbreak is a part of all of the dating and relationship stuff. It just comes part and parcel. So let's learn how to heal it, shall we? Because you don't have to have it as a doomsday sentence. You can learn how to heal it. Okay, that's it. I will be back here next week, next Wednesday, to do another one. If you've got any questions for me, send them to me ahead of time, and I can answer them live next week. All right. Mwah! Love you all. Bye.